Pigeons, this is Geriatric from Straight Talk. I'm here with a couple of special guests, and one of our special guests you already know because we've seen them every once in a while, and I'm going to let them introduce themselves. And don't forget, my pronouns are they and them. And don't forget, don't mess with people's pronouns, just respect them.
And don't forget.
And don't forget, because I forget.
You said that about 4 times already.
Yeah, because I keep forgetting.
Yes, right. Right. And I'm Mackenzie Drive, local recording artist from North Bay. And that's all I really have to say. I didn't script anything else.
You rehearsed that?
I did. It took me days to rehearse that. I just found out about this yesterday.
Right. We're so organized around here. And Alex, please tell us a little bit about yourself. Introduce yourself.
Yeah, so my name is Alex Tyrrell. I'm running for the leadership of the Green Party of Canada on an eco-socialist platform in the Green New Deal. I've also been the leader of the Green Party of Quebec for about 6.5 years now, and I'm 31 years old.
Wow.
I don't think he noticed that we were in green as well.
Yeah, I did.
Today.
We're sporting the support.
Yeah.
We got lots of support.
Well, you do. I don't.
Right. Tell us what an eco-socialist is, because a lot of people don't understand that terminology.
Yeah, well, eco-socialism is a question about taking care of the environment, but also the population at the same time, making sure that everybody has access to quality healthcare, education, government services, and so it's really about protecting the environment, but also people at the same time.
Right. And the Green Party actually platformed on a basic income this last election as well.
Yeah, that's correct, yeah.
So how would that actually work?
A basic income is an income that's guaranteed to everybody. So they'll say that everybody is entitled to a certain amount of money per year, and it's a way of lifting everybody out of poverty.
Right. Which is interesting, but I have one more question before I turn it over to Mackenzie here, because you ever hear the term that the Green Party is conservatives that recycle?
Yes, I've heard that many times, and I've heard it. I've heard the joke, but I think that the Green Party should really take a sharp left turn, and that we should abandon fiscal conservatism, for example. There's a lot of people say, well, the Green Party is about balanced budgets and stuff like that. I think that we should be very ambitious in what we're proposing, and that we should.
Anyway, so Alex, you had talked about being 31.
Yeah.
So being 31 and being potentially a political leader and running for political leadership.
Prime Minister.
Wow. That's true. Thank you for educating me on that. I'm not very good at
what
politics.
I'm here for.
Oh, thank you. But the only thing you're good for.
Oh, I serve a purpose.
So how do you feel as being a 31-year-old and what is seen as a older job?
It is difficult sometimes, but I think that a lot of people want to see young folks in politics. So there is a little bit of ageism that I encounter and things like that, but I'm quite used to it because I was elected as leader of the Quebec Green Party at age 25.
Okay.
So that was provincial politics. Now I'm trying federal politics leadership at age 31. So I'm used to it a bit.
So you were just sitting at home and just went, oh, what the hell? Let's run for Prime Minister.
Yeah, well, it was a bit of a longer process than that. the first time.
Jerry's from the olden age.
Yeah.
You wake up and make a decision.
And then we forget.
The first time I ran for politics was in 2012 in the Quebec provincial election, and there had been a very large student movement taking place that had actually succeeded in bringing down the majority government an entire year before their mandate was up. So that's when I first stepped forward for the Green Party, and I really wanted to be able to run in that election and go to the debate table with the other candidates, especially the governing Liberal candidate, and to really tell them what that they were doing that was wrong.
Well, I would tell you the students in Quebec are very, very active.
Yeah.
They turned the government around on so many issues, and the rest of the country goes, oh, we don't like that, but, we still don't like that.
It was a lot of work.
Right. But the students were out in the streets. It's actually like Ontario right now with the teachers.
Yeah.
Like the show of support they had on Friday was incredible.
Yeah.
Maybe talk a little bit. Quebec is kind of in an odd place right now because you have this new law around religious symbols that seems to be really controversial for the rest of the country because it actually came up in the federal election.
It's controversial for us too in Quebec.
Right.
Yeah.
So maybe tell us a little about what the law is and then what position we're at.
Yeah, so they've adopted this law that they call Law 21 in Quebec, which makes it so that people who work for the government in what they call positions of authority, such as teachers, police officers, crown prosecutors, are not allowed to wear any kind of religious symbol at work. So a hijab, turban, that sort of thing is all banned. And it's a law that's unconstitutional, but they use the notwithstanding clause to allow them to discriminate against minority groups, who wear religious symbols. And I've said before that I think that this law is racist because it targets people who wear religious symbols who are disproportionately members of ethnic minorities. And so I think that, Quebec nationalism with respect to these kind of things is completely misguided, and the Green Party of Quebec has always stood very strongly opposed to any rollbacks of religious symbols, and especially with respect to government-imposed dress codes in the workplace.
This is also being challenged in the Supreme Court, if I'm not mistaken.
It's working its way through the courts, but it's very difficult because although constitutionally in Canada we have the right to freedom of religion, the law that they've passed has invoked the notwithstanding clause, which allows them to have a discriminatory law. It's just that it has to be renewed every 5 years by the Quebec National Assembly. So they're trying to contest it, but the grounds that they're contesting on it are somewhat difficult from a legal perspective.
Bastards.
Let's
just call it like it is.
Leave it to Jerry. We're trying to be professional here.
Right, I am.
Like the only day a week you get to be professional, and come on.
Well,
pull it together.
I'm having wine later.
Yes, we know. You have wine every night.
Yeah, that's true. That's very, very true.
So, Alex, one thing that I would like to know, as being 31 and potentially being the Prime Minister, as Jerry said before, how do you take care...
Oh, yeah, I did. Right.
How do you take care of yourself and your own mental health in all of this? Because being in charge is a lot of effort. It's a lot of peopling.
Yeah.
There's a lot of questions and people being at you all the time.
Definitely.
How do you deal with that? Because I know I suffer from that too with what I do with my recording music and releasing music and everything. So how do you cope with that?
It's difficult, but I think that any good politician has to be able to strike a balance. And if you work at it too hard and you get too wrapped up in what you're doing and the criticisms that you receive, then I think that that's when people get burnt out. So I try and I've become very good at self-regulating in that kind of regard. So when it's going too far, then I know I have to take some time off. And I like to do things like kayaking and going on hikes and that sort of thing, biking. So try and keep a balance.
Bit of an outdoorsy guy.
Yeah.
Cool.
So what's the process for you running for the leadership of the Green Party? Because a lot of people don't know this process, and people have an opportunity between now and your convention coming up that they could actually join the Green Party and actually influence the vote. Yeah,
so anybody who joins the Green Party for $10 per year can vote in the leadership race. So it's a one-member, one-vote contest. And in order to run, they've set a number of conditions. One of them is that we have to raise $50,000 for the party, which I think is really unfortunate because it's actually more than the NDP, for example, charged $30,000 in their last race. They had 4 candidates. And so by putting it at $50,000, the Green Party is really breaking sort of with our tradition of grassroots participatory democracy, and we might find ourselves with a leadership race with only 2 candidates running. So I think it's a little bit unfortunate that, money is playing an important role in this leadership race, but it's not necessarily insurmountable, and that's why I'm going around the country now to talk about my vision and to explain the Green New Deal to people and see what kind of support there is.
Cool.
So it's really important to understand that most people don't know that there's this fee involved to run for leadership. Like, if I decided to run tomorrow,
oh Lord,
because
help us.
I'm wearing green, I should. I have
Tra-la-la.
to come up with $50,000. I'm just an old lady, and I mean, there's only so many streetlights I can stand under.
Yeah, that's it. And I'm sort of the product of a public financing system in Quebec, in which donations from individuals have been limited to $100 per person per year. And so the Green Party of Quebec is financed almost exclusively from the votes that we receive, because the government finances us depending on the number of votes that we get. So now in this new role, I have to sort of transition into being able to raise a lot of money and stuff like that. And I'm not willing to make any compromises on my ideas or my policies in order to get donations. I know a lot of politicians have done that in the past, and that's one of the reasons that our government is so disconnected from what the population is actually asking for. So it's a bit of a challenge, but I'm not afraid of a challenge.
Well, and I think we should ask the most important question of all of them right now.
Are you single?
I am. Yeah.
Oh! Was that it?
No.
Oh, sorry.
Your glasses are on, like...
Are they fogged up yet?
I think they are. Jerry's
Warm in
been
here,
single
boy.
for a very, very, very long time. But you're here in North Bay.
Yep.
So how long have you been in North Bay for?
Been here since Saturday.
Since Saturday, and what do you think?
I think it's a really nice place. You know, you got the water
Yeah.
right out there, and it's a nice small town. And
Did you check out the farmers market?
not yet.
No. Cool.
Yeah.
They're usually Saturday mornings, but I also see that there's a nice group of people here that are here to see you.
Yeah, there is.
So they're waiting to hear some important things that you have to say.
Looks like it.
Where do you head next?
Next, I'm off to Sudbury, and so I've got a speaking event at a high school around noon, and then another event with the Green Party members in the evening. Then it's off to London, Ontario. There's an event at the University of Western University, and then after that I'll do the GTA, come back to Montreal, take off, go to Edmonton, Alberta, Calgary, and then on to Vancouver, Victoria, Nanaimo, before coming back to Montreal and heading out east.
Do you have a tour bus?
I don't have a bus. I'm using a 20-year-old Honda Civic, actually.
Awesome.
Are you going to
Wow.
ask him anything on party policies?
Go for it.
Wow. Who knew there was an audience?
I think it's great. Audience participation.
Amazing. Awesome. Actually, we will. That actually is a very good opportunity to do that now. So let's talk a little bit about, we kind of touched on basic income. What's some of the other things, especially around environment?
Yeah.
That seems to be a really big thing for the Green Party.
Yeah, well, one of the things that I'm proposing in my Green New Deal platform is to transition away from fossil fuels within 10 years. So a 10-year mass mobilization, like World War II scale mobilization, to get off of fossil fuels. And in the process of doing that, offer a job guarantee to all fossil fuel or fossil fuel dependent workers. I think it's a really important step of getting those people on board with the transition. And the way that I propose to do this is through creating a series of new crown corporations that would be responsible for producing much of the equipment and services required for the energy transition. And so I think that a lot of the resistance to the energy transition in Canada comes from fossil fuel workers and the people that they vote for in politics. So to be able to get them on board, I think, is something that's really been lacking in the environmental movement in Canada up until now. And a program like the Green New Deal, you know, we can say to people who are, for example, living in New Brunswick, but they fly out to Fort McMurray to work in the tar sands for 3 weeks and then come back. They're working up there in the winter. There's only 4 hours of daylight. There's toxic fumes blowing around the wind. I've been up there last summer. It was horrible. And, you know, to be able to tell those people that, like, not only will you be able to hold on to a job, but you'll be able to work in a job in a Crown Corporation in New Brunswick rather than having to travel across the country away from your friends and family for 3 weeks out of a month. I think that that's something that could really get a lot of people on board with, and that they'd actually have much higher quality jobs under this plan than they do in the current extractivist plan of Canada, which is just to extract as many resources as quickly as possible with as little regulation as possible.
And this isn't a new concept, because there's countries in the world that have already done this.
Yeah, well, I mean, the Green New Deal is somewhat of a new concept because it's you know, ideas that have been put together, and I'm not the first person to come up with the Green New Deal. It has been pushed by the Green Party of the United States for over 15 years, and more recently it's been popularized by Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and Bernie Sanders, who are also running on a similar program. But my Green New Deal is slightly different from theirs, especially with the creation of the Crown Corporations and the job guarantee.
What about equality? Like, this is the Green Party actually led the way when same-sex marriage.
Yeah.
What about equality, ensuring that you're getting proper representation from all the communities out there, making sure that people have a voice and are being heard, and having a space, but not having somebody else speak for them?
Yeah, I think that it's really important to have a diverse team of candidates in the Green Party, and I'm really proud of the work that we've done in the Green Party of Quebec. In the last election, we ran 97 candidates. Out of that, the average age was 34, so really a lot of young people running, and we also had 58% women candidates on our team, and very significant representation from minority groups of all types. So I think that is something that has been somewhat lacking in the Green Party of Canada over the last little while, or forever, really. And so I hope, that one of the first things I would do if elected leader is to start a recruitment campaign to really recruit a dynamic set of candidates for the next election. And as you mentioned, to have people who are from the community speaking for themselves as Green Party candidates, rather than having Green Party candidates who are not from the communities speaking to them.
And also, one of the things that you've talked about, what's your position like on things like Pharmacare and those things that we're actually in these debates now around this stuff?
Well, I think that with respect to Pharmacare, the government has a huge role to play in that we should have universal Pharmacare coverage, and there's a lot of health services that are not covered. I mean, like in Quebec, if you want to have an MRI, if your doctor orders an MRI, it could take up to 6 months before you get it. And so what it does is it's pushing people into a two-tiered system where they either take $1,000 out of their wallet and get their diagnosis quicker, or they wait in line. And I've met people who ended up paying $1,000 to be diagnosed, for example, with multiple sclerosis. And if the person had waited 6 months more untreated, the consequences might have been very bad. The person could have ended up in a wheelchair. So there's a lot of injustices in our medical system that need to be addressed. And I think that it's really the government's role to provide quality healthcare services for everybody in Canada.
Well, the big question that everybody will say is, how are we going to pay for this?
Yeah. So the Green New Deal has new revenue streams. We want to increase taxes on the rich, big business, multinationals, mining corporations, carbon emissions. But we're also not worried about going into debt, because we have a huge environmental challenges ahead of us. And if we're to choose whether we leave future generations with an environmental debt or a financial debt, I personally will always choose the financial debt, because the environment is priceless. And going into debt to build things like high-speed rail to every major city in Canada, public transit infrastructure, biomethane equipment, insulating buildings, these are all things that will remain in place for many, many years. And I think that recently governments do not have very ambitious plans. Like in Montreal, we have a subway system with 75 stations. It was built in the 70s, right? And it seems like today, like if we were to say, well, we're going to build a subway system with 75 stations on the island of Montreal, people would say, well, that's impossible. We would never be able to find the money for that. It's it's too expensive. It's out of reach and such. So I think that we've sort of lost our ambition, to build big projects, and the energy transition is going to cost hundreds and hundreds of billions of dollars. So we need to be very clear with Canadians as a Green Party and say that, if we are elected, like we will implement major changes, and that we won't shy away from going into debt in order to pay for the energy transition. And that contrasts with the current policy of the Green Party, which is that they call fiscal conservatism. So it's about having a balanced budget after a 4 or 5 year period. I think that it's going to take quite a bit longer than that to do the transition that we need to do, and the science is telling us that it's very urgent. And by acting quickly, Canada can put itself as a leader on the world stage with respect to these things. We can develop technologies, we can export them. So there's a lot of opportunities in this, and I think that particularly young people are looking for very ambitious plans for the future of the country.
Okay. Wow.
Wow. Good answer.
Good answer. Alex, we know that you have a whole whack of people getting ready to come in and say hello to you and get to know you a little bit better, so we don't want to keep you too long. And I thank Mackenzie, as always.
Thank you. I just stared.
You just sit and look
Stared
pretty.
the whole time.
And I want to thank you for coming out, and I wish you all the luck in the world, and I hope you're very successful. And
Thanks.
hopefully when you're Prime Minister, we get to do this again.
Yes, absolutely, I promise.
Well, thanks for turning in, little pigeons. It's great to see everybody, and we'll talk to you soon, and watch out for more episodes of Straight Talk.